The galaxy held its breath. After humanity's rapid rise, the Council could no longer ignore the truth. Humanity had proven its strength, its courage, and its unity, but the elder races were not ready to accept a new power so quickly. A combined fleet was assembled, one of the largest the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from multiple species glimmered in formation, engines blazing, weapons ready. Their mission, to teach humanity its place in the stars. Admiral Reyes received the reports aboard the EpicSciFiTales. He had anticipated this moment. For months, human commanders had prepared strategies, simulations, and alliances. Humanity would not face this challenge blindly. We expected them to test us, Reyes said to his officers. Now they are coming in force. This is not just a battle, it is the moment the galaxy learns who we are. The officers nodded, a mix of tension and determination on their faces. At the edge of human-controlled space, the first alien ships appeared. They stretched across the void like dark shadows, their weapons ready, their fleets coordinated. Humanity had numbers far smaller than their opponents, but they had something else: strategy, creativity, and unity. The first exchange began cautiously. Scouts clashed with patrols, testing each other's strength. Energy beams cut through the black of space, lighting up stars in brilliant flashes. Admiral Reyes gave orders with precision. Use the decoys, spread the fleet, force them to divide. Remember, outthink them, not outgun them. Human ships split into smaller groups, weaving through asteroid fields and magnetic storms. Hidden drones launched from secret bays, confusing alien sensors. The smaller races allied with humanity sent support where it was most needed, striking from unexpected angles. The Council delegates watched from their distant chambers, stunned. Humanity was holding the line against impossible odds. The battle escalated. Massive warships of the elder races fired volleys that could destroy cities. But humans had anticipated this. Energy shields redirected the blasts, and automated countermeasures neutralized enemy missiles. Every move was coordinated, precise and calculated. One Jaran cruiser found itself trapped in a field of human drones. It spun wildly, its weapons misfiring as the drones disabled its systems. Nearby, smaller human frigates slipped through enemy lines, striking vital engines and communication arrays. The aliens realized too late that they had underestimated humanity. "This cannot be," shouted a Varn admiral, his claws trembling. "We have never faced such tactics." But humans had learned from every battle, every mistake, every challenge. Their ingenuity and courage made them unpredictable and unstoppable. On Earth, citizens watched live transmissions of the battle. Families, workers, and children cheered as human ships maneuvered with brilliance. Schools held lessons about courage and unity. Stories of bravery spread across continents. In Mars's command center, young soldiers studied the fleet movements with awe. "They said we were weak," one pilot whispered. "But look at us now. We are unstoppable." Commander Lee nodded. "This is what happens when a species stands together. Every life matters. Every action counts. Humanity is proving that nothing can break us if we fight as one." The battle raged for hours. Systems were damaged, ships destroyed, but humans never faltered. The alien fleets, though larger and more advanced, began to falter. Their attacks were divided by clever maneuvers, their formations disrupted by human tactics. Admiral Reyes saw the moment for a decisive move. "Deploy the EpicSciFiTales," he ordered. "Engage the enemy flagship and disable their command systems. We will show them the cost of underestimating humanity." The massive ship surged forward, its engines blazing, its energy cannons fired in precise volleys, disabling the flagship's shields and communications. Panic spread through the Council fleet as coordination broke down. Ships collided, retreated, and struggled to regroup. For the first time, the Elders realized humanity could not be defeated by force alone. In the Council chambers, arguments turned into fear. The Jaran hissed in outrage. "We have never faced such a species." The Kareen shook their heads. "They do not act like other races. They adapt. They endure. And they fight not for power but for survival and freedom." The Vayari Elder stood, his crystalline body glowing with authority. "Enough. If we continue this war, the galaxy will suffer. Humanity will not be broken. We must negotiate or risk total destruction." The room fell silent. The truth was undeniable. Humanity had shown the galaxy that courage, unity, and intelligence could rival even the oldest and strongest powers. Back in space, The human fleet did not pursue the retreating council ships. Instead, they held their positions, signaling their willingness for peace but on equal terms. The message was clear. Humanity would not conquer, but they would not be conquered either. A communication channel opened. The council leader spoke to Admiral Reyes. "Humans," he said, voice solemn, "you have proven yourselves. Your strength, your strategy, and your unity cannot be denied. We seek negotiations. We offer recognition. The galaxy must change. You are no longer a young species to be dismissed." Reyes nodded. "We do not seek conquest. We seek respect and safety for our people. Let this be the start of a new era." In the days that followed, envoys from the Council arrived on human space stations. Agreements were made, boundaries were defined, and recognition was given. Humanity was accepted not because the elders wanted to, but because they had no choice. The galaxy had learned a lesson in courage, resilience, and determination. Across the stars, smaller races celebrated. They had witnessed what a united, determined species could achieve. Some began forming their own alliances, inspired by humanity's example. On Earth, cities were bright with lights and hope. Streets were filled with celebrations. Children danced and elders smiled, proud of the species they had helped shape. Humanity had faced the galaxy and emerged not as conquerors but as equals. Admiral Reyes stood on the bridge of EpicSciFiTales, watching the stars. The battle had been won, but he knew the galaxy would never remain the same. Humanity's rise had changed everything. Commander Lee joined him. "The Council has recognized us," she said. "But this is only the beginning. We must remain vigilant. Others may still challenge us," Reyes nodded. "Yes, but today humanity has shown its strength. Today the galaxy has learned that no one should underestimate us." They looked out at the stars, endless and shining. Humanity had not only survived, they had proven that courage, unity, and intelligence could reshape the future. In distant worlds, stories of the human fleet's victory spread. Children pretended to pilot starships inspired by the courage they saw. Scientists studied human tactics, marveling at their creativity. Leaders reconsidered old policies, realizing that oppression would no longer work against a species so determined. The Galactic Council would never forget this day. The lesson was clear: underestimate humanity, and you would pay the price. And on Earth, humans celebrated not for conquest, not for domination, but for survival, for unity, and for the promise of a future among the stars. The galaxy had learned something important. Humanity would not bow. Humanity would not break, and humanity had risen to stand proudly among the stars. The turning point had come. The age of humanity in the galaxy had begun. The galaxy was old. Civilizations had risen and fallen like waves on an endless ocean. Some species built empires that stretched across hundreds of stars, while others hid quietly on distant worlds, never seeking more than peace. But in the middle of this wide and endless galaxy, one desperate voice cried out for help. That voice belonged to the Threxians. The Threxians were an ancient race. Their skin shimmered like silver in the light of their twin suns, and their cities floated in the skies above oceans so deep that even their best machines could not reach the bottom. For thousands of years they had lived in peace, believing they were strong enough to defend themselves from any enemy. But now, their peace was broken. A hostile empire known as the Zorath Dominion had risen from the dark edges of space. The Zorath were not builders. They were destroyers. Wherever they went, they conquered, stripped worlds bare and left only ashes behind. To them, other species were nothing but resources to be used and then discarded. The Threxians were proud, but even they could not resist the endless waves of Zorath fleets. Planet by planet, their defenses fell. Their armies grew smaller. Their leaders argued in silence, unsure of what could be done. Finally, in desperation, the Threxian High Council made a decision they had never made before. They sent a signal into the stars. It was not a command. It was not a demand. It was a plea. The message said, "We are under attack. We are losing. We need help. Any who believe in peace and freedom in life itself, stand with us, please." The message traveled through the galaxy like a cry carried on the wind. It passed through the great markets of the Valoran traders who shook their heads and turned away. It reached the tall towers of the Koresh priests who whispered prayers but offered no soldiers. It touched the ears of the militaristic Hernak, who laughed and said that only fools would stand against the Zorath Dominion. One by one, the galaxy's great powers heard the call and turned away. The Threxians began to lose hope. But then something unexpected happened. The signal reached a small blue planet near the edge of the galaxy. The planet's people were young compared to the other species. They had only just begun to step among the stars. Their ships were smaller, their weapons less advanced, their numbers tiny in comparison to the ancient empires. These people called themselves humans. When the humans first heard the message, their leaders gathered in long meetings. Some argued that it was not their fight. Earth was still healing from its own problems. Why risk lives for a people so far away, against an enemy so powerful? But others said that this was the moment that would define what humanity was meant to be. Every great power turned away. One human leader said, "They are afraid. But if no one helps, then the Zorath will keep growing. One day they will reach us too. Better to stand with the Threxians now as allies, than to face the Zorath alone later." Others spoke more simply. "If someone cries for help and we have the power to help, then we must." The final decision was made. Humanity would answer the call. The first fleet to leave Earth was not large. It carried only a few warships, some carriers filled with supplies, and a group of diplomats who would speak on behalf of Earth. The fleet was led by Admiral Marcus Hale, a man with gray hair, steady eyes, and the kind of calm voice that soldiers trusted even in the darkest battles. As the fleet traveled through the cold void of space, messages were broadcast ahead. "We are humans. We heard your call. We are coming." When the Threxians received the news, they could hardly believe it. The counselors gathered in their shining hall, voices overlapping in confusion. Humans. Who are they? What power do they have? They are not part of the great alliances. They have no strong fleets. What can they do against the Zorath Dominion? Some believed the humans were foolish. Others thought it was a trick. And yet, deep in their hearts, the Threxians felt a spark of something they had not felt in a long time. Hope. When the human fleet finally arrived at the edge of Threxian space, the first meeting was held. The Threxians expected arrogance, perhaps empty promises, but when Admiral Hale appeared on their screens, they saw a man who looked neither proud nor desperate. He spoke in a calm, firm tone. "We are here," he said. "We know our ships are not as many as yours once were. We know the Zorath are strong, but humanity does not turn away from friends in need. If you will accept us, we will stand with you, not for profit, not for power, for commitment." The Threxian High Council sat in silence. They had heard many words in their long history, but never words like these. Not a single demand for resources, not a single condition of payment. Only a promise to stand beside them until the end. The first days of alliance were not easy. The Threxians doubted the humans. Their soldiers whispered that these newcomers were fragile, too soft for war. The human ships looked small and unimpressive next to the massive Threxian carriers. But when the Zorath launched their next raid, the truth began to show. The humans fought with courage. Their ships darted into dangerous positions protecting Threxian supply lines. Human engineers worked day and night to repair damaged Threxian stations. Human medics risked their lives under fire to carry wounded aliens to safety. The Threxians began to watch closely. These humans were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. But they were something else entirely. They were committed. Everywhere they went, the humans gave everything they had. No half-efforts, no hesitation. If a Threxian ship was in danger, a human ship would stand in front of it even if it meant certain destruction. If a city was burning, human soldiers would run into the flames to save those trapped inside. The Threxians, who had once thought of themselves as proud and alone, began to see a new truth. There was a strength greater than weapons, greater than numbers, greater even than fear. It was the strength of loyalty, and humanity had it in endless supply. In the weeks that followed, more human fleets began to arrive. Not just soldiers, but doctors, engineers, builders, and teachers. They brought food to starving Threxian colonies. They taught simple but clever methods of defense. They repaired things the Threxians had thought beyond repair. Slowly, the Threxians began to change. Their fear lessened. Their despair lifted. For the first time in many years, their people began to believe survival was possible. The message had been a plea for aid. What they received was more than aid. They received a promise that humanity would not abandon them. When the next great battle loomed on the horizon, One Threxian general said almost in disbelief, "When we called for help, the galaxy turned away." But the humans came. They gave us not only their strength but their hearts. And so in the dark void of space a new alliance was born. An alliance not of convenience, not of profit, but of total commitment. The human fleet's arrival was like a spark in the darkness. For the first time in many months, the Threxians saw ships that were not fleeing, not retreating, not broken. Instead, they saw a small but determined fleet that came not with hesitation but with resolve. Yet even as hope began to stir, doubt grew as well. The Threxians had lived for thousands of years. They had seen younger races rise and fall. Many times ambitious newcomers had promised greatness, only to collapse under the weight of war. To the Threxians, humans seemed no different, just another young species throwing themselves into battles they could not win. Among the Threxian High Council, voices clashed. Councillor Valon, whose scales shone with deep blue light, spoke with sharp words. "We cannot place our trust in these humans. They are weak. Their fleets are small. The Zorath Dominion will crush them, and we will be left alone again." But another councillor, old and weary, raised a trembling hand. "Perhaps, but when every great power turned its back, these humans came. Should we not at least listen?" So it was decided. The humans would be welcomed for now, but every Threxian soldier, every Threxian leader, carried doubts in their hearts. When Admiral Marcus Hale and his officers stepped onto the shining floor of the Threxian capital, they were met with guarded eyes. Tall alien guards stood in lines, their silver armor reflecting the light of the great chamber. The councillors sat on their high seats, their glowing eyes fixed on the humans. Admiral Hale bowed slightly, then spoke in a steady tone. "We come not as rulers, not as masters, but as allies. We heard your call and we answered. We know our fleets are small compared to yours, but what we lack in numbers we will give in commitment. Humanity does not abandon those who ask for aid." The chamber fell silent. Some Threxians whispered to each other, unsure whether to believe such words. Many had lived long enough to see promises broken before. Finally, Councillor Valon leaned forward. His voice was cool and sharp. "You speak of commitment, Admiral. But what can commitment do against the fire of the Zorath Dominion? What can courage do when their fleets are 100 times larger than yours? Will your people bleed for a war that is not their own?" Hale met the alien's glowing eyes without flinching. "Yes," he said simply, "if that is what it takes. But we will not bleed alone. We will fight with you side by side, and together we will not fall." Something in his voice struck the chamber. Not arrogance, not weakness. A steady certainty like a stone that refused to move no matter how the storm raged. The councillors gave no reply. But from that day forward, the humans were allowed to walk among the Threxian people. The first days of cooperation were not easy. Threxian soldiers watched the humans with suspicion. The humans' uniforms looked simple, their weapons small compared to the grand armor and glowing blades of the Threxian warriors. Whispered doubts spread through barracks and command halls. Too fragile, some said. Too soft, others muttered. They will break when the fighting grows fierce. But the humans did not act proud, nor did they act defeated. Instead, they went to work. Human engineers joined the Threxians at damaged space stations. With clever tools and quick thinking, they restored power to failing systems that Threxian engineers had already abandoned. Where the Threxians relied on old traditions of construction, the humans brought fresh ideas, simple, effective, and fast. Human doctors set up medical tents near wounded Threxian soldiers. With steady hands, they treated injuries using methods unfamiliar to the Threxians but surprisingly effective. The Threxian healers, once doubtful, soon found themselves learning from these humans, sharing knowledge across species for the first time. And the human soldiers, though smaller, though less equipped, trained tirelessly. They stood side by side with Threxian warriors, learning their tactics, teaching their own. What the humans lacked in raw power, they replaced with teamwork, adaptability, and an unshakable will. Slowly, the whispers began to change. Strange methods, some Threxians admitted, but effective, others replied. They may be small, but they do not give up. The true test came during the Battle of Kethor's Belt. The Zorath launched a sudden strike at the mining stations in the asteroid belt of Kethor. Those stations supplied rare metals that the Threxian fleets needed for their weapons. Without them, The defense lines would weaken. A Threxian fleet rushed to respond, but it was already too late. The Zorath were there, their dark ships surrounding the belt like wolves around a herd. The Threxians prepared for retreat. To face the Zorath head-on in such numbers was suicide. But the humans refused to flee. Admiral Hale's voice cut through the comm channels. "We cannot abandon this belt. If we do, the enemy grows stronger. We hold the line here." The Threxian commander laughed bitterly. "With your tiny fleet? You cannot stand against them." "Perhaps not alone," Hale replied. "But we are not alone." The human fleet moved first. Small frigates darted into the field of asteroids, weaving between rocks and shadows. Using clever maneuvers, they struck at the Zorath supply ships, crippling their logistics. Human fighters flew in tight formations, distracting larger enemy cruisers while Threxian cannons found their marks. At first, the Threxians watched in shock. They had expected the humans to collapse under the weight of the enemy. Instead, they saw something else: boldness, creativity, a refusal to yield even when outnumbered. Inspired, the Threxian fleet rejoined the fight. Side by side, humans and Threxians fought with fire and determination. Hours passed, ships burned, but the line held. At last, the Zorath withdrew, unwilling to lose more ships to what should have been an easy victory. The mining stations were saved. The Threxian fleet, though damaged, stood tall, and among the survivors whispers grew into respect. "They did not run," a Threxian captain said quietly. "They fought harder than anyone expected. Perhaps these humans are different." In the days after the battle, something began to change. Where once Threxians looked at humans with suspicion, now they looked with curiosity. They asked questions. They listened to human stories of Earth, of oceans and mountains, of struggles and triumphs. They began to see not fragile beings but resilient allies. One young Threxian soldier named Kalor, who had fought beside human marines on Kethor's belt, said to his commander, "When the Zorath closed in, I felt fear. I thought all was lost. But when I looked at the humans, I saw no fear in their eyes. Only fire, only determination. They gave me courage I did not know I had." And Kalor was not alone. Across the fleet, across the cities, the Threxian people began to speak differently. The humans had come as strangers. Now they were becoming something else. They were becoming trusted. Still, doubt had not vanished completely. In secret chambers, some counselors whispered warnings. The humans are bold, yes, but boldness is not enough. The Zorath will return stronger. When that day comes, can these young allies truly stand? Or will their fire burn out too soon? But even as doubts lingered, one truth could not be denied. The Threxians had called for help. The galaxy had turned away, and only humanity had come. No matter what the future held, that truth shone brighter than any doubt. And deep in their hearts, the Threxians knew the story of their people was no longer their story alone. It was now shared with a species unlike any they had ever met, humans who gave not promises of wealth or power, but something greater: commitment. The alliance between humans and Threxians had begun with suspicion and doubt, but after the Battle of Kethor's Belt, the mood started to change. For the first time in many cycles, the Threxians no longer felt alone. The humans had stood with them, had bled with them, and had not retreated when all hope seemed lost. Yet the war was far from over. The Zorath dominion was vast. Its fleet stretched across the stars like a storm without end. For every battle the Threxians and humans won, 3 more were already coming. The enemy did not rest, did not hesitate, and did not show mercy. The humans knew this. The Threxians knew this, but still they chose to fight. The human way of war on the Threxian capital world. General Sarath walked through a training field where human soldiers were drilling. He had expected to see weakness, but what he found surprised him. The humans were smaller than Threxian warriors. Their armor looked simple compared to the shining suits of the Threxian guard. Yet they trained with tireless effort. They shouted encouragement to one another, helped their injured comrades stand, and repeated each maneuver until it was perfect. General Sarath turned to Admiral Marcus Hale, who stood watching with calm pride. "Your soldiers," Sarath said slowly. "They are not the strongest I have seen, not the fastest, but they never stop." Hale nodded. "That is the way of humans. We may not always be the biggest or the best, but once we choose a path, we walk it to the end." The words lingered in Sarath's mind. He had seen many warriors before, but none with such unshakable spirit. The siege of Vera Station. The true measure of the alliance came during the siege of Vera Station. Vera was a massive orbital hub, guarding the entrance to the inner Threxian systems. If it fell, the enemy would have a clear path to the Threxian homeworld itself. The Zorath knew this, and they came with a fleet so large it darkened the stars. Inside the station, fear spread quickly. Civilians crowded into shelters. Soldiers prepared for a last stand. Even the Threxian commanders whispered that the station would not hold, but the humans refused to surrender. Admiral Hale spoke to both human and Threxian forces through the comm network. His voice was steady, strong, carrying across the fear like a beacon. The Zorath think they can break us with numbers, but they forget something. They forget that courage cannot be counted. They forget that commitment cannot be measured. We will hold this station, not because it is easy, not because it is safe, but because it must be done. The battle began. Zorath ships rained fire upon the station. Human and Threxian fighters launched into the void, weaving between enemy cannons. Human marines fought in the station's corridors, side by side with Threxian guards, holding back wave after wave of boarding parties. Hours turned into days. Supplies ran low. The wounded filled every medical bay. Still, the humans and Threxians fought. One scene remained etched in the memory of all who survived. A group of human engineers refusing to abandon their posts as fire spread through the lower decks. With smoke choking the air and heat burning their skin, they continued to repair the shields, knowing that without them, the station would fall. Not one of them left until the job was done. When reinforcements finally arrived, the station still stood. Burned, scarred, broken in many places, but still standing. The Threxians could hardly believe it. In the past, they had lost stations far stronger than Vera. Yet here, against overwhelming odds, the humans had held the line. Whispers across the galaxy word of the victory spread. Other alien races who had turned away from the Threxians now heard whispers of humans. They are reckless, some said. They are fools, said others. But many added in hushed voices, and yet, they do not fall. For the first time, the galaxy began to see humanity as something more than a young and untested race. They began to see them as a force unlike any other, not because of their technology, but because of their unyielding spirit, the cost of loyalty. But commitment came with a price. In the battles that followed, many humans gave their lives. Entire squads were lost defending Threxian colonies. Whole ships vanished in the darkness, refusing to retreat even when escape was possible. To the Threxians, this was almost unthinkable. Their own culture valued survival, retreating to fight another day if needed. But the humans saw things differently. One Threxian soldier, Kalor, who had once doubted humanity, found himself fighting beside a human marine named Captain Sarah Ward. She was fierce, determined, and fearless in battle. Together, they defended a bridge against Zorath attackers for hours. When Kalor was injured, Sarah carried him to safety, even as enemy fire rained around them. He tried to protest, but she only said, "We don't leave anyone behind." Later, when Sarah herself was struck down in another battle, Kalor stood over her with tears in his eyes. He had never seen such loyalty before, not just to her own people, but to allies as well. Her sacrifice became a story told again and again among Threxian soldiers. The growing bond as battles raged on, humans and Threxians began to share more than strategies. They shared songs, stories, and laughter in the rare, quiet moments between fights. Human engineers taught Threxians how to build faster repair systems. Threxian scientists shared energy technologies with humans, helping improve their ships. Together, they created hybrid strategies neither species could have imagined alone. What began as a fragile alliance was becoming something deeper. It was no longer just survival. It was friendship. General Zorath, once doubtful, admitted to Admiral Hale one evening, "I thought your people reckless. I thought you would fail. But I see now that you have given us something more valuable than victory. You have given us hope," Hale simply nodded. "That is what allies do." The endless storm, the war showed no signs of ending. Each victory was followed by another battle. Each triumph carried a cost. Yet the humans never withdrew. When the Zorath attacked refugee ships, humans placed their own vessels between the enemy and the helpless, even when it meant certain loss. When Threxian colonies cried out for aid, human fleets rushed to protect them, even if it meant leaving their own worlds vulnerable. Again and again, the Threxians asked, "Why? Why do you give so much for us?" And again, the humans gave the same answer, "Because you needed us. And because once we commit, we do not turn away." A new reputation by now the galaxy was watching closely. Where once humans were ignored, now their name carried weight. The humans, alien traders whispered in markets, "They are not the strongest. But if they are your allies, they will never abandon you." For the first time in history, humanity had gained a reputation not through power, not through wealth, but through commitment. And among the Threxians, that reputation became something more. It became trust. As the third year of war began, the Threxian High Council looked across the stars and saw that their story had changed. Once they had been a people on the edge of extinction. Now, with humanity beside them, they had become something else. Survivors, fighters, and, most importantly, believers in the power of unity. But the Zorath Dominion was not finished. Their fleets were gathering again, larger than ever. A storm was coming, one that would test not only the alliance but the very meaning of commitment itself. And when it came, the humans would be there, standing side by side with the Threxians, ready to give everything they had, because that was who they were. The galaxy held its breath. For years, the humans had fought alongside the Threxians. They had defended cities, rebuilt stations, and risked their lives in battle after battle. Yet now the war was approaching its most dangerous stage. The Zorath Dominion had grown stronger. Their fleets moved with precision, striking at the heart of Threxian space. The Threxians feared their homeworld would soon be next. Panic spread through the cities, whispers of doom filling every street and hall. But the humans remained calm. Calm, not from lack of fear, but from a steady certainty. They had faced overwhelming odds before, and they had not backed down. Admiral Marcus Hale gathered both human and Threxian commanders for a strategy meeting in the main war room aboard the flagship Eternal Resolve. "The Zorath are planning a direct assault on the Threxian homeworld," Hale said, pointing to the holographic map of the galaxy. "They have over 1,000 vessels forming near the outer system. If they reach the homeworld, it will fall. We need a plan that can stop them before that happens." Counselor Valen, who had long doubted the humans, frowned. "We cannot hope to match their numbers. Any attack will be suicide." Hale's eyes were steady. "Then we will not attack in the way you expect. We will use speed, precision, and surprise. Our fleets are smaller, but that is an advantage. The Zorath do not expect the bold. The plan, the humans proposed a daring maneuver, a simultaneous attack on multiple points of the Zorath fleet. Small human squads would penetrate enemy lines to disable command ships, while Threxian capital ships engaged the larger vessels. The Threxians were nervous. "You ask us to split our forces," one general said. "It is dangerous. Many will be lost," Hale replied. "Some may be. But if we do nothing, all will be lost. Sometimes the only way to win is to risk everything." For the first time, the Threxians realized the full scope of human courage. They did not fight blindly, but they were willing to risk every life for the sake of commitment, not glory. The battle begins. The attack began at dawn. The human squadrons darted into enemy lines like lightning, using asteroids, debris, and shadows to their advantage. Zorath gunners fired relentlessly, but the humans were fast, clever, and unpredictable. Meanwhile, the Threxian fleet engaged larger enemy cruisers. Their weapons struck true, but the sheer numbers of the Zorath made the battle seem endless. Admiral Hale coordinated every move. His voice was calm over the comm channels, guiding human and Threxian pilots alike. "Move left. Shield down only when ready. Focus on the command ships. Protect civilians." It was a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Chaos and order collided, strategy and courage intertwining in a deadly dance. The turning point hours into the battle, disaster struck. One of the human assault squads, led by Captain Sarah Ward, was pinned under fire from 3 Zorath destroyers. Communication with the main fleet was cut. The odds of survival seemed almost impossible. Captain Ward looked at her crew. Their faces were tense but determined. "We cannot give up," she said. "We finish this or we die trying." Using a combination of quick maneuvers and daring tactics, the squad infiltrated the enemy line. They targeted the Zorath command ship, planting explosives in its engine cores. With a thunderous explosion, the command ship went dark. The Zorath fleet wavered, confused without its leader. From the bridge of the Eternal Resolve, Hale smiled slightly. "This is why humans fight," he said quietly. "They do not run. They do not yield. They find a way no matter the odds." The tide of war changes with the command ship destroyed. The Zorath fleet faltered. The Threxians pressed their advantage. Human pilots coordinated strikes, targeting weak points in the enemy's formation. In a stunning display of courage and strategy, the Allied forces began to push the Zorath back. On the surface of the Threxian homeworld, civilians watched the sky light up with energy beams and explosions. Fear had been replaced with hope. Children cheered as ships from both species defended their world. Kalor, the young Threxian soldier, stood with his family outside the capital. He watched humans maneuver their small fighters in ways that seemed impossible. "They are incredible," he whispered. "They are not the strongest, but they never give up," and it was true. The humans did not retreat. They did not falter. Every challenge was met with action, every danger with determination. Their courage was infectious, spreading to Threxian soldiers and civilians alike. Sacrifice and commitment. The victory did not come without loss. Many humans fell in battle, giving their lives to protect Threxian ships and stations. Entire squadrons vanished into the void, yet their sacrifice inspired others to fight harder. One human engineer, Mara Jenkins, stayed aboard a failing Threxian repair station under enemy fire. Her companions begged her to leave. She shook her head. "If this station falls, the fleet will lose its edge. I will stay. I will finish this." When the station finally stabilized, she emerged, battered and exhausted but alive. Her courage became legend among both humans and Threxians. Stories of bravery spread across the fleet, boosting morale and strengthening the bond between the two species. A lesson learned. After the battle, the Threxian High Council gathered once more. They had seen human strategy, human courage, and human loyalty firsthand. Councillor Veylan, who had doubted the humans from the start, spoke quietly. "I thought them reckless, fragile, foolish. But I see now, they are something more. They fight not because they must, but because they choose to. They do not leave their allies behind. They do not falter when the path is hard. This is extraordinary." Hale replied, "Humans are like that. We do not always have the strongest weapons or the largest fleets. But when we commit, we give everything we have. And when we fight together, nothing is impossible." The counselors listened in silence. For the first time, they understood that strength was not measured only by firepower or numbers. Commitment, loyalty, and courage could turn the tide even against overwhelming odds. Hope rekindled. The victory at the Threxian homeworld was more than a battle won. It was a message to the galaxy. The humans had shown that even the young and small could make a difference if their will was strong, and their commitment total. Across the galaxy, whispers spread once more. The humans were no longer seen as weak newcomers. They were admired, respected, and feared, not for the damage they could do, but for the promise they kept. "They will stand with you," alien traders said. "No matter what. If they choose you as an ally, they will fight until the last breath." For the Threxians, this lesson was priceless. They had survived because they were not alone. They had survived because humans had given more than ships and soldiers. They had given everything. Looking ahead, even as the victory celebrations began, the threat of the Zorath remained. The Dominion was wounded, but it was not destroyed. Another attack would come, fiercer than before. The galaxy was not yet safe, but the humans were ready. Admiral Hale addressed the combined forces. "The Zorath will return. They will try again. But we have seen what we can do together. We have seen the power of commitment. Stand with me, stand with each other, and we will survive no matter what comes." The Threxians cheered. Their fear had been replaced with confidence. For the first time in many cycles, they believed not only in victory, but in the strength of alliance. And somewhere deep in space among the human ships, Captain Sarah Ward smiled. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would do it again, because humans did not turn away. Humans did not give up. Humans gave total commitment, and that was a power unlike any other in the galaxy.